When Daphne Pariser was 10 years old, she traveled to Kenya with her father. What she saw on this trip would change her life forever. It was on a bus ride through Nairobi when she came face to face with a young boy living in extreme poverty. It was a moment that launched a life purpose for a 10-year-old girl. Fast forward, and the now University of Rochester PhD student is the founder and CEO of Humans for Education. The nonprofit works to empower children and revolutionize global communities by working with locals to help them develop sustainable, long-term solutions to poverty. Daphne Pariser joins me at the desk to share more about her story and her work. And welcome to the show. It is great to have you here.
Yes, thanks. It's great to be here.
So Daphne, I want to know, what do you remember from that trip to Kenya when you were 10 years old and the encounter that you had with that young child that really launched this life mission?
Yeah, so my dad actually won this trip to go on safari, so we got to go for free, which was awesome. And we were super excited about it. My dad had really ramped it up, and I was so excited. When we got there, we had been traveling for, I don't know, 20 hours, and we're sitting in this bus, and I was so tired, and I looked out the window, and there's this kid. We had stopped at a light. The kid came up to us, started banging on the window, asking for food and for money. And I just had this moment of, wait, I don't understand. Yeah. Why am I in this bus, and why is this kid outside asking for food and for money? I had this real moment of, I cannot believe that there are people that live like this in the world. And I had seen poverty in the US before, but it just was such a very extreme reality that I had never seen before. So for the rest of the trip, I did have a great time with the animals, but it really stuck with me, and I cried a lot. And so our tour guide came up to me at the end, and in much nicer words, he basically was just like, stop crying about it, pull up your big girl pants and do something about it. And so I went home and I started researching nonprofits and for-profits. I was clearly super popular in 4th grade, so but that was what the trip was like.
Wow. Well, a lot of people, I mean, we go to places, we go to lands, and we visit, and they leave this indelible impact right on our lives. But in terms of people actually returning and thinking and finding how do I become part of a solution to a problem that I witnessed, that does not always happen, and yet that is what you did. And so I want to know, so you obviously, you're 10 years old, you're a 4th grader, you're researching how to start a nonprofit. What happened, though? Because I know I listened to your TED Talk.
Yeah.
You weren't a college student who went off to spring break partying. You actually returned to Kenya to find out, hey, what do you need and what can I do?
Yeah, so I actually, when spring break came, I had this opportunity to go, paid my own way, which was almost $2,000, but I figured it out. And when I went out there, I didn't have any ideas of how we were going to build this nonprofit. The research that I did was what was successful for nonprofits and what was successful for for-profits, and what made both of them basically collapse. So I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to put together. So when I went out there, I went and talked to a bunch of community members, and I said, if you were going to get yourself out of poverty, what would you do? And they said education and healthcare.
And these were community members actually living in poverty.
Living in extreme poverty. Yeah. The only way to get there is to turn left at a bush and turn right at a rock. Right. Yep. There are no roads. So when we got there, we were talking to students, we were talking to community members, we were talking to teachers. We wanted everyone's opinion, and everyone had the same one. And I said, that's great, but you don't have the money for education and healthcare, so what would you do? And they said, well, we want to build a small business that will help us pay for education and for healthcare. So it was actually their idea to start the small businesses. It wasn't mine, but we decided there was a lot of information that I had learned about small businesses, so we were able to help them do the research and help them actually get started and grant them the money to do it.
So what you did was after talking with these families and community members, you I like how you titled this, A Culturally Sensitive Solution to Reducing Poverty. And explain to me the emphasis on making sure that it was culturally sensitive.
So the idea was, we could have put solar panels out there, we could have started a software company, we could have done all of these things. The problem is, most of these people didn't know how to use a computer. Actually, they're phenomenal at smartphones, but computers aren't as ubiquitous. So we wanted to make sure that it was a business that they could run more or less without us. I mean, we wanted to give them some tools, but we really wanted them to be able to succeed even if we weren't there. So what we did was we asked them, what are your skills? What do you bring to the table that we can use to build you a business that is operational and functional in your area? And so they were the ones that came up with cows. And I never would have thought about buying and selling cows. Yeah, never would have thought about it. They came up with it, and we just said, yes, let's try it. So we researched it for like 8 months, and it turns out that it was a really great investment for that area because those communities basically buy and sell cows and use them as commodity, basically. So it's almost like stock in a way. And they trade them for everything, for school tuition, for books, for food, for everything.
So you started this was at one pilot school.
Yes.
And you started it at this school. And the idea was the folks within the school would help to run this business.
That's right.
And what happened exactly? This was a 1 year, am I correct on this? A 1 year pilot? So what happened after that 1 year? Because I know you did some finance training with them.
Yep.
You explained that you gave them the resources that they needed to really get started, but what happened after that year?
Yeah, so the first year was really tough. We were up against a drought that was the worst drought in 20 years. It was terrifying. We thought all of our livestock was gonna die. We were super lucky. We actually figured out how to build troughs and how to build rain collected water so that the cows wouldn't die from that. And actually it wasn't our idea, it was their idea. So the biggest part that we learned was actually that we really need to be listening to them, to what are their solutions to all of these different things that we're seeing with these small businesses. But afterwards, our very first school, Destiny Shaper Primary School in Engoswani, Kenya, they made about $16,000 US dollars, which is a huge deal for people in that area. So their budget's about $10,000 a year. So this really made a difference for them. They used that money to actually send their teachers to get more training. They bought 2,000 textbooks. They added kale to their meal plan, which for some of these kids, it was the first vegetable they had ever eaten in their entire lives. So not only were they trying to give these kids a better school life, they were trying to give them better health. They knew that if these kids were sick, they weren't coming to school. So they invested in a lot of that, and they actually spent some of their money, reinvested it into another aspect of their livestock. They decided to use bees now, and we project that that's going to make $3,000 extra this year for them.
Explain for our viewers who are watching right now and they're thinking about public education in America, and they're thinking, why does a school have to raise revenue to support itself? So talk a little bit about the educational climate and why the schools want to bring in the revenue as opposed to relying on government funding.
Yeah, so the way that it works in Kenya is some schools can rely on government funding and some schools can't. So here we call it private schools, and I think it's the same. Private schools here typically don't get government funding, but in Kenya, they don't get government funding, but they also typically don't get tuition either. And so without that, you have a school that's built, but nobody's there to maintain it. No one's there to feed the kids. No one's there to buy the books or any of those things. So it's extremely important that the schools have some revenue source so that they can actually teach their kids. Who's paying for the teachers if no money is coming in? Yeah.
That first school was just the beginning, and I want to emphasize that was just the beginning because now we're talking about 3 schools.
That's right.
Explain the growth and the impact that you have seen, and at the same time also talk about some of the challenges along the way.
Yeah, so one of the things that I really like to talk about is actually how local Rochester has really been extremely important in making this happen. So we've had local Rotary groups, we've had the University of Rochester, we've had a ton of local people volunteer with us to really make this happen. And so actually because of Rotary and the university and all of these different pieces, we were able to open these 2 more schools. And the really exciting piece is that one of these schools was started by this lady who gave up her job, used all the money she had saved her whole life to start a school for 50 orphans who didn't have anything. And because of our programs, she can now feed these kids. These kids were having 1 meal a day. Now these kids have 3 meals a day, and they have an actual facility where they can stay and they can be protected from this harsh environment that they live in. They live literally in the safari. Like, there are elephants and lions that come in all the time. And so so now they have a very safe place where they can be. So this lady actually decided she was gonna save her money. So we have a matching program. Any money that's put into a savings account, we match dollar for dollar to incentivize them to save. So she actually made, the last month, she made $800 from our program. And she decided to use half of that for savings because she is saving to build a new classroom. She started with 50 kids. She now has almost 100 students. We've seen that parents are actually taking their kids out of schools and sending them to schools that we work in because of all of the programs that our schools are now able to provide because they have the money for it. Yeah.
Any roadblocks that you've encountered along the way?
Yes.
After that first year of the drought?
Yes, the drought was awful. The good thing is when we start with schools, we are really careful about making sure that everyone feels like they're involved. So every school has a committee. And this committee is all the elders from that community. So we go through the committee first. So they have to approve all of our work, and they approve all of our budgets, our proposals, everything before we actually start so that they're on board. So we've been super lucky that we actually have had almost no issues in Kenya. One of the biggest issues that we had was a government shutdown, which we couldn't get so here in the US, you get your 501c3 to be a nonprofit, and then you're good for the rest of whatever. In Kenya, you have to renew it every year. The government shut down right when we were going to renew it, and so that made some issues. But otherwise, we've been extremely lucky. On the US side, the biggest thing that we've had issues with is mostly just funding. We have a lot of the business and the methods behind us, but we're really just trying to increase what we want to do. Our vision is not 3 schools. Our vision is 90,000 students. Right now, we have somewhere around 1,000. We want to get to 90,000 students, and if we can do that, we can really change the face of poverty for these kids.
Well, you did a TEDx talk titled "Can Millennials Actually Change the World?" And your talk wasn't so much about millennials, but really about the simple things that all of us can do to make a positive change. And I encourage people to check that out because it does it, regardless of age or background. You explain how every single person can be empowered to do something.
That's right.
We have to close for now, but our viewers have an opportunity to learn more about Humans for Education and to get involved in the next phase of work taking place in communities in Kenya. The nonprofit is hosting an inspirational storytelling event called One Step Beyond. That is on Wednesday, June 19th. Doors open at 6:30 p.m. at Comedy at the Carlson. Local comedians and talk show hosts, including yours truly, will share stories about what it means to go one step beyond. 100% of ticket sales will support building a new health clinic that will serve 2,000 families in a community in Kenya. So to get your tickets, go to humansforeducation.org/onestepbeyond.